Tammy Fogel here, just an average citizen, ready to talk to you a little bit about what happened last week at the City Council Vision Retreat. So it was actually very helpful, and I'm very glad they did it. Now, I don't like the way they handled it. I think it's way easier for you to be more transparent and open about what's going on, especially when you're changing gears in a way that it has not been done in several years, than it is just to say, oh, well, no one knew what was going on. You're just as blind as the rest of us. I don't think there was any reason why they couldn't say, hey, listen, we normally do our budget retreat during this month, but we're going to delay that till April. This is going to be about setting priorities, and I think that's more important before we actually tackle the budget. How great would that have been if they would have given us that information? Because then we're like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's see what happens. And instead, they're like, no, we're not going to tell you, and you're going to be in the dark, and then you're going to be frustrated. And so now you're like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, why couldn't you inform me of what's going on, right? Like, why couldn't you just be transparent and let us know what's going on? And so I think that's the disappointing part, is that they don't understand how decisions they make are actually pretty damaging to building credibility and trust with us as citizens. And so it's important that they start to change that, I hope, and recognize it doesn't cost them much, but it does build a lot and gives them a lot more room to do the things they want to do, if that's what they really want. That's debatable. So the reason why I'm going to go through this really quickly is because most of you don't have time to watch even 3 hours of this. If I show a video, and I'm going to cut out some of the conversations that they had, the discussion at the tables, if I cut that out, I don't think it's still going to be something most people are going to watch. And let me just say this. There's a word that's used a lot, collaboration. And I just want to let you know that collaboration and collective are words that are not used by people who understand freedom and value the rights God has given us. It is a shifting off course just so slightly that we don't even realize we're being led in a totally different direction. So let's restore team building and good conversations and leave collective projects and collaboration off to those who don't really value and appreciate the nation that was created for us, and that we actually could live in and potentially enjoy more if we step away from that. So let's focus. This day was more on team building and vision casting, and I think that's awesome. But I don't like when we talked about how we work collectively together, all that stuff. So we'll see how that looks when we get into it. I'm trying to stay on track here. All right, so this man named Mike Mowry, I think is his name, from Strategic Government Resources, came in and wanted to give the council an ability to see what was needed in order to move forward in some goals and priorities. And you can't have that unless you're working together on the same page. And he wanted them to work together as a team to figure out what this council in the city, what do we need to do to have a coherent, unified vision, so that we can use it to feed back into the budget what we need, those objectives, how do we achieve those objectives, and and measure the success of those priorities. So he showed a circle chart, which I'll show here, that has the cycle of strategic visioning. It doesn't necessarily start in this order, but this is where he decided to start on the cycle of community input, staff input, then the council envisions what they want for the next 5-10 years. Then the staff plans it based on the objectives created. The city council affirms that they are on the right track. The staff executes it, then the city council evaluates it, and then the staff suggests, and so on and so on. And so that's the point. So the big part they started with was making sure they understand where their roles start. Now, everything is relational, that's foundation, but the council has a different job than the staff does and the city manager. And they needed to make sure that the city council understood their role so that they weren't trying to do what the staff needed to do and vice versa. They're policymakers. They need to come up with the vision and the policy that helps the staff know the direction to execute that vision and that policy. And so it was really fun. They had group discussions at tables to find out what their strengths and their weaknesses. And each council went around, and unfortunately Brian Yates was not there. He could not be present for the meeting. He had some other previous obligations he had to do, so he was not there. So it was a little different, I imagine, because he wasn't there. But my favorite part was when I felt like one of the councilmen said, my greatest weakness is I have too many strengths. And it's like, come on, you have done this enough. You've worked on enough of these projects. If you can't identify a weakness, then that says a lot more about you than you probably realize. So, learned a little bit about each of the personalities. It was really insightful because when you understand their personalities and how their strengths are, then you can see how they address and interact on the council together based on those strengths and those weaknesses. And I think there's a lot of balance there right now. I think things are going to be changing up a lot because of the 2 council positions that will be changing here in this next upcoming election. And so then they went and talked about, they wanted to discuss think about the future. They wanted to have a robust plan to sustain what do you want to be known for? What are your reputational drivers you want to be known for? And they needed to list their top 2 and narrow it down. And so here's a couple of them: clear vision, community wise, they love their neighbor, diverse unification, organization, issues, they're responsive, common sense policy, exceptional service, adaptive responsive to external changes, fiscal responsibility, organizational, attractive employer. They want to be able to listen across all layers. And so then they became to the idea of pressing problems that we need to address in the strategic plan. And so here were their pressing problems they felt that the city has: housing, streets, state mandates, firemen's retirement fund, clear vision, communication, eagerness to adapt, 5-year capital program, sustainable compensation plan, child care, water, funding challenges. I think those were most of them. And so so we're going to talk about what's not working. The first thing they discussed was housing. They're not building houses. That's not the government's job, but we have to make sure that we have limited government, but making sure the housing sector of our city is safe for families and residents, but not so obstructed by all the regulation of government. So looks like there's going to be probably 8 to 10 years of issues that we're going to be dealing with because of what the AI Center is bringing in, and then also what's happening in the changes with DIAS. So we've got a long-term plan that we've got to figure out for this housing with all the influx of people moving into Abilene. The second one was water. We make sure that, we're talking about the Cedar Creek Reservoir. We need to make sure we're responding to our structures that are aging and way, way past their prime. So the third one was, of course, streets. Yay, they talked about streets because it seems that everybody thinks it's going well, but no one really talks about it. But I think they're still trying to remember long-term what needs to happen, that we've got a goal we're going towards. Then the firemen, we need to take care of our firemen. And then they threw Brian under the bus because he wasn't there. And they're like, oh, we can't talk about it because Brian's not here. And it's like, hello, council, you're supposed to know what's going on with your firemen and your public servants, your civil servants. Why are you not talking about it? That's dumb. So I've been attending those meetings. I know more of what's going on, and I could have had a conversation right then and there, even though I don't know everything. That's the problem, is we don't have these discussions, therefore we can't fix the problem. So here is a perfect time to talk about it, and they chose to bunt it off and dismiss it. Very disappointed. Succession planning, making sure they're filling positions. They want to make sure they have staff, and I want to just point out here, I think we're top heavy right now. We've got too much staff at the top and not enough money to work around having what we need. And I remember a couple meetings ago, I asked who was the city manager, engineer, because they keep talking about the city engineer and the city engineer this and that. And I was like, who is it? There's no city engineer listed on the website. They didn't answer my question. I know all the staff up there, all the department heads, but I don't know who the city engineer is. And that seems kind of odd to me. Why is that? Does every city have to have an engineer? I would think so, but we'll learn more later. Hopefully. I don't know. The seventh thing was funding challenges. They complained about SB2. And here's where, as a citizen, I'm just like, listen, I'm tired of you complaining. This is not just the city council. This seems like every elected official is like, wah, wah, wah. We have too much problems. Well, then do something about it, right? But SB2 was created to make sure that citizens know what they're actually paying in their taxes, what their revenues are going for, so that they can talk apples to apples about what revenues are happening and from year to year, so that we can know last year's revenues are actually more than this year's revenues, even though they lowered the tax rate and are complaining about not having enough money to do what they need to do. We've been not paying attention because we didn't know how to pay attention. The state has helped us through SB2. So why is that a problem? The other thing I know about SB2 is it only limits them to be able to raise their tax rate 3.5%. So if your revenues are continuing to increase and you can raise it up to 3.5%, why are you complaining about not being able to capture the growth here in the city? I don't understand that. Our revenues are going really well in the right direction, yet they're complaining that they can't take advantage of it because they can't increase our taxes more. I don't know all the ins and outs of this all the time. I'm not going to claim that I do. So I'll look into that a little bit more, but I just want to let you know initially what my thoughts were after this this back and forth because it was brought up multiple times. Okay, so then they also talked about how the fact that they have supposed to have a 5-year capital improvement plan, but capital improvement project plan, but they haven't done it in a while. And it was like, wait a minute, but you told me that bonds were the way to go because you were allowed to use it for capital improvement projects, and that was totally legal. And now you're telling me you should have had a plan so that you can start preparing for those things that need to happen? Which is it? It's so confusing. And again, I don't think these people are out to be like duplicitous. I'm giving them that benefit of the doubt. I don't think that's what it is, but I do think there's a disconnect between what they're saying and what they're doing. And I'm tired of people like me who ask legitimate questions and are made to look foolish because we would dare say, don't take out another bond, let's prepare for it. And they're like, well, that's not what we're supposed to do. When they talked about the green energy plan or the energy savings thing that they were trying to do, was it in the fall? And it was the spring. They wanted $15 million. I'm like, why are we not preparing for these air conditioners to go out? And they're like, because that's just what it needs to happen. And it's like, but now we need to do it. So what is it? Is anybody else feeling the frustration? Is anybody else going, what the heck is going on? Oh no, it's not just me. I know they think it's just me, but I know you and I are on the same page because we want to make sure our government is responding the way we need for them to respond, not just doing the things the way they've always done it, without adapting and changing and making sure they're using their resources well, using our resources well, right? Okay, and so then they moved to the SWOT analysis, which is called Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. So their strengths, they thought they had a healthy relationship with the council, which is going to change because 2 of them are stepping down. The local economy, the momentum is diverse. There's strong, stable staff, community support, highly engaged, community supportive civil servants, the graphic locations, the weaknesses, the competitive wages. I'm thinking for non-civil staff, I don't know, because they always talk about non-civil staff, which is like the people who work at City Hall, not necessarily the people who work in the civil department, which are the police and fire. So they weren't specific on that, and I wasn't asked to ask for clarification. So another weakness is aging infrastructure, the CIP plan, the long-term lack of deferred maintenance, not a properly informed populace. They are listening. They know that we need to be more informed, but we don't just need to be informed, we need to be engaged with, because that's part of the process. If they don't engage with us, it doesn't matter if they just disseminate information. They need to have responses from us, and that is something that is not working as well as I think it could. And they compare to other cities, I don't care. I'm saying it's not working well for us. Let's fix it. And then they say that we are resistant to change. Some opportunities, they think like Fort Phantom, leveraging the AI into DIAS growth, the benefits of steering well the future of our community, because a lot of what we're doing is going to benefit the future generations, not necessarily us. The education opportunities to offer to stay in town. They can't fully capture because of SB2. Oh. The potential of I-20 and the Loop 322, quality of life, potential for increasing fees to fund one-off programs. So some of the threats: cybersecurity, staff retention, water demands, cost escalation, state limitations, proper planning, and target potential. We could be a target because DICE is ramping up their whatever they're doing here. So now I just want to go into that. Okay, so then they moved to Divine Success, which is now our strategic priorities. So they set individually as a council and it came up with 5 strategic priorities, and they paired up, broke those 10 priorities down and back into 5, and then they had, I think, 3 lists of 5 each. And so I did it too. It was fun. I just wanted to see if I was paying attention enough to know what was going on or if I was completely off. You'll have to find that out later. All right, so they came up with these basic priorities. I think there was about 15, if that's my math is correct. Strength and DICE, but I don't have them all written down because I was doing it really fast. But strength at DICE, improve infrastructure, increase incentive for housing, growth around Fort Phantom, address infrastructure, promote development, increase amenities, competitive wages, increase housing, improve development. Those are the ones that they talked about. Steward resources. Oh, that was another one. Yeah, steward resources as well. Okay, so they moved into trying to take the ones that were mentioned twice as significant priorities. And so they found 4 that were mentioned twice. Side note, I met with some council members. I met with each one, almost everyone but one. And I talked to them about, things that I thought were important. And one of the things that concerned me is the strategic priorities for the council it didn't have public safety. And I was told, well, it's a given. It's understood that public safety is a priority. And I'm like, no, it's not, because if it's not a priority, it's not a priority, and it doesn't get the attention it needs. In my opinion, that's kind of how I operate. And so guess what? The first one they decided was a priority now, public safety. that's a win. That's really good. And I hope it helps our firemen and our police to know that their public safety, they are one of the main functions of our city government, is to make sure that is functioning well. Now, unfortunately, it took a little bit of a turn because they are now still focused on the civil servants and non-civil servants and making sure that there's enough staff to do code enforcement and all these things. And I have some thoughts on that, and I understand the legitimate needs, but I don't think we're still quite getting the full picture, in my opinion, on what needs to happen. And again, I think it goes back to we're top heavy, and if we can resolve that issue, I think we'll have more funding options available to pay people better. But again, this is a government entity. It is not going to pay as good as a private sector. And so we have to find some ways to incentivize people to want to be invested to be those non-civil servants, right? Like, what does that look like, and how do we have those conversations? Number two, the next one that came up was infrastructure. Again, we need to have a plan for a priority for infrastructure, which that's great because I think that's very much the thing. 3 is housing, for all the people, because rent is out the roof. Even the inventory for buying houses, I think, is very limited. And then number 4 was economic development. They talked about DIAS, Phantom, and increasing amenities. And then he asked the council if there's any other things, any other priorities that they didn't have up there or that weren't enough to be a part of the 4 that were mentioned. And they worked through a lot to make sure some of these things they mentioned went under and categorized them correctly. And one council member said something about community engagement. And it was kind of silent, and there wasn't a lot of activity on that conversation until the gentleman who was running it said, this is an important deal. You need to make sure community is engaged because of the nature of how our city is growing and things like that. And it was great because I'm a huge proponent of community engagement. And part of that is they think, well, because no one shows up, it's not our job to do it because we don't get the response we want. That's not the way it works. Like, if I'm failing as a parent, I don't go, well, my kid won't listen to me, so they're on their own now. No, we have to work on cultivating that relationship, re-engaging in a way that gives them, builds that trust up. And that was one of the things that I think they don't understand is when we don't trust the local government, we don't believe and want to engage with what they're doing. And so if they could establish some trust through transparency, then we probably would have a lot more people interested and willing to be engaged and participate and receive information from them like that needs to happen. So I'm glad that outside source kind of confirmed some things that I believe. And then, of course, then they went through and did their objectives for each of these strategic priorities to make sure that they can measure it. And I think I can include those here or figure out how to do that later because I don't want to sit here and let you watch all it. I guess you can watch it and read it while I'm finishing up. But it was a very productive conversation. It was a very productive meeting. I'm glad they did it. And I think they've done it in years past. I don't know how long it's been, but kudos for Emily, the city manager, for organizing this and encouraging this to happen. I think, these are the things that help us have insight. And because we are just average citizens and we're paying attention and engaging and trying to figure out how to do things, transparency matters. And again, I wish they would have handled this better so it could have been a launching pad rather than feel like a stumbling block to us moving forward in better relationship with those who are elected and those who work in the office. But I will say I have enjoyed getting to know all the office staff. I know they don't love me, and that's okay because I do kind of poke the bear sometimes, but they're very nice to me. And for the most part, everyone is respectful, and they treat me as someone who does have a right to be there, and I think that's important. And I think the more you get to know that side of them, the better things will go. They're not against us. They're not, but I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding in the past of how citizens engage with local government, and the staff has taken the brunt of it. And while maybe some of that's fair and they deserve it, really our dealing is with the city council, and we tell our elected officials what we need from them so that they can set policy like these priorities to make sure they're reflecting. I wish there would have been an opportunity for the citizens to give some feedback before they went through this, because I don't know really how much feedback they've given, because there are some of you who you're probably not listening. You're maybe watching just to see what I say, but you talk to the council all the time. But there's a lot of us who don't know how to do that in a natural way. And so feedback is important, and I'm not sure that they really got a good perspective of that before they made these big decisions. And that's something I think we can improve upon in the future. But it's really important that you subscribe and you share this video with your family and friends, because honestly, I'm not gatekeeping this information. I'm not trying to be the knower of all things so that I can tell you how to do it. That's not what it is. We're learning together. We're trying to engage in ways that we were not taught in school to be civically minded, and we weren't taught, and our parents weren't taught, and it's been so dormant for so long, we don't even know what this looks like. So we're figuring this out together, and it's so much more fun if we do it together, because each of us have a role to play, and we all need to participate in this so that we can make our community the best it can be. And I'm all for that, and I know if you're watching this, you want to have a better community to live in, not because we live in a terrible community, but we need to keep improving and growing and making things better. So I hope you feel a little bit more informed, a little more educated, and a little bit more empowered to make an impact in Abilene in the big country. Until next time.